Reverend Michael Brown, my dear friend, is here in California for our Synod meeting for the URCNA. You've come out from Milan, Italy. I don't know if our listeners realize this, but you used to be a regular on AGR. We used to get together earlier years, and you'd come to the study here when I first got here in 2012.
Yeah. Back in your small study, which was still glorious compared to my study, but this one is like the archetypal study. Anyway,
well,
I think this is what Paul saw when he had his vision of heaven.
Somebody the other day was slamming pastors with, don't trust in your study, and I was like, I didn't choose this. It's like it was given to me.
It's beautiful.
I don't own it, but I'm going to enjoy it.
Right? You should.
So, anyways, we used to have you on, and it was wonderful those years of doing all this. It's good to have you back. You and Wes Bradenhoff were like the first guys on AGR.
Oh, yes, I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah. So
those were good times.
Times. So now I have. We graduated in 2004 from Westminster together. 20 years in ministry. That's kind of going to be what is going to be the theme here. Before that, we're going to go into some of your Italy stuff, what you're doing now. But 20 years of ministry. We're going to talk about all the things we did wrong.
This is going to be like a 3-hour program.
Yeah, so. Self-loathe a little bit. And things we could have done better. Things that we've learned along the way. We think anyone who says this probably hasn't achieved it, but we think we've gained a little humility. But,
I hope so. I want to.
We're trying. We're praying for it.
I want to be humble.
It's the Romans 7 problem.
Yes, it is.
We do want humility
and wisdom.
And wisdom as you grow. And with gray hair, that's supposed to come.
Yeah. You've got more than me, and I'm older than you.
I've just been beat up in ministry.
But you had some gray when we were in seminary 20 years ago.
It's true.
And I remember Bob Godfrey asked you if you frost your hair.
You had to say that here. Yeah. He did ask. He asked if I frost. I don't even know what that meant. That's like a 70s or 80s term. Yeah.
Nobody frosts their hair.
It's so Bob Godfrey,
Right. So anyway.
Well, I think one time his hair was so perfect, I asked him if he wore a toupee. So
his hair is kind of perfect.
He was a little shell-shocked when I asked him.
His hair is a little...
But he doesn't. That's all natural. So anyways, good to have you here. I'm thrilled to have you on the program.
It's good to be here
today. So let's just start. Tell us a little bit about you. I don't think it's been so long since you've been on AGR. Just a little bit of your bio. Your wonderful wife, right?
Yes, she is wonderful.
Yeah,
she puts up with me. She must be wonderful. So 4 children, 1 grandchild. Yeah. So first of all, just thanks for having me on, Chris. Great to see you. Great to be back and be with my friend and look forward to seeing everybody at Synod. And married 34 years. Janie and I were married in 1990 at the ripe old age of 19.
It's amazing.
I know. And then, so we have 4 kids. One of whom has moved to Italy with us, and so he's been in Italy during all his teenage years. But now he's headed off to college to Grove City in a couple of months. But 1 grandchild, and the other 3 kids and our grandchild all live in the States, and so happy to be here and be able to see people.
Yeah,
so
it's good. So you tell us a little bit about where ministry started in 2004. You were ordained in 2004. I was ordained in 2004 together. And you went off and did planting work, which I always thought it takes a unique person to do that. I never saw myself as a planner, but I did see you as a planner. So
yeah, it's not for everyone. I'd say that. And but no, So in seminary, I was there from 2000 to 2004, Westminster, California. That's where you and I met. Mm-hmm. And I think you and I met at the bookshop on Adams Avenue in San Diego.
I think that's right. You
walked up, you're like, hello. You're like, I think you're in one of my classes or something like that. I'm like, who's this guy talking to me? But so we went to school together. We graduated together. And I started under Escondido URC, but they had asked me to begin this Bible study in 2003, a year before graduation. And so I did a weekly Bible study that turned into evening services in November of 2003, Bible study in June of 2003, so 21 years ago. Mm-hmm. No, gosh, what is that? Yeah, 21 years ago. And then November, we started evening services. Graduated in May, started morning services in May, and then was ordained in September of 2004.
Okay. Yeah.
So ordained right here in Escondido, URC, and Bob Godfrey did the sermon, and Mike Horton did the charge, and then I served that work up until 2018. So 15 years total, 14 years as an ordained minister. Wonderful experience. Love Christ URC. I was able to preach there yesterday. It was like a family reunion. Yeah. What can you say? I think especially when you have the opportunity to be a church planter and then serve a church for a time like that,
right,
it feels like it's part of you,
right.
Family. And so it was just really great to go back and see everyone yesterday, and had a lot of interns, and some of them are here as pastors for Synod. Yeah. And so some of them were there yesterday, Mark Vanderpool and Chris Smith and Chuck Tedrick, and look forward to seeing others, Daniel Ventura and so Taylor Kern. So very, very grateful for the opportunity we had.
Yeah, that's great. It's like they say your first church is kind of like your first love. So
and it was hard to leave.
It's a unique bond
that
you have as a pastor with the first congregation. I felt that with mine.
Right.
And it was hard to leave.
You went to Linden.
I went to Linden. Same thing. We have kind of similar paths, just I was in a different kind of trajectory of established churches, right? But it was hard. It was hard to leave these people. So when you go back, the bonds are still tight.
Well, I remember you and I having those conversations when you were wrestling with the idea of leaving Linden and going to Escondido. And I was like, I want you to come to Escondido because I'm just down the road in Santee.
You were like Farrell to me as he was to Calvin. You get over
it's
there.
An awesome opportunity, and look how the Lord has blessed it. And so I'm really happy that the Lord led you here.
Yeah.
And
so then you went on at some point, and we took on the responsibility here to oversee you.
Yes.
And to call you and send you to this really unique work in Italy.
Yes.
I think that's fascinating because it's difficult soil.
Right. Not easy. All of Europe is hard. It's tough going. It's very post-Christian, postmodern in the true sense of the word. Once upon a time, Christianity thrived throughout Europe. But today it's very difficult to plant churches there and to see growth. And in Italy in particular is really hard because it's the home of the Vatican. It's the home of Roman Catholicism. And so there are Roman Catholic churches everywhere. I mean, just in virtually every neighborhood, you will find 2 or 3. Wow. So anywhere you look in any direction, you're going to see towers, church bells. We have national holidays devoted to Mary, to her Immaculate Conception, to her Assumption. It's so Catholic in its culture, and yet very nominal and very secular. So it's this weird combination between post-Christian secularism with this cultural Catholicism.
How does Roman Catholicism in Italy differ from Roman Catholicism in America?
Well, I would say my opinion is that here in the States, you have a pretty committed and conservative wing of Catholicism. That you have that too in Italy, but I think it's more prominent in America. It's more common, at least this is just anecdotal, but I think it's more common in America to meet a committed Roman Catholic who knows Catholic doctrine than you would in Italy. They do exist, but the vast majority of Italian Roman Catholics are extremely nominal. Don't go to Mass regularly. Would still call themselves Catholic. They're baptized. They might go to a nephew's baptism, a niece's wedding, or something like that. Yeah. Maybe they go for Christmas. You do have a small amount of people who do attend. And there are certain regions and certain cities that have fuller churches than others, but on the whole, the churches are pretty empty. And so 70% of the country, 60 million people, would identify as Roman Catholic, even if the vast majority of them never darken a door of a church. Less than 1% identify as Protestant, and the majority of those are Pentecostal.
Wow.
So not an easy place to plant a Reformed church.
Place.
Yeah.
You wonder, we have a lot of people who have ties obviously to Europe, and people, especially in the EURC, who go back and they complain about the deadness of the whole thing. You wonder if that's the trajectory here in America.
Could be.
You just wonder.
Yeah.
But it's ripe for a reformation.
I think so. I mean, there was a Reformation there once upon a time in the 1520s, 1530s.
Yeah.
And then, so you had guys like Zanchi and Vermigli and others. And there was this, what they called the Circle of Lights, the Spirituali, these guys in Italy who, were teaching the doctrine of justification by faith alone, even a few cardinals who believed in justification sola fide. But Inquisition, 1542, makes all of that illegal and impossible. And so basically you have three options. You either flee, which some guys did, like Vermigli, and eventually Zanchi. They go over the Alps, into Switzerland, end up in Geneva, or they go on to England or, wherever. Or you went underground and tried to survive. So guys like Pietro Carnesecchi did that up until I think like the 1560s, but eventually was caught, tortured, killed. And or you recanted, like Reginald Pole did, and you go backward and back to the Roman Catholic Church. So it never gained traction after the 1540s, and so there are no Reformed or Presbyterian denominations there today.
Is there a hostility to Protestantism? Do people? I guess the better question first off is: do people understand what it is?
Usually not. So we always have an opportunity when I speak to my neighbors or talk to people, they can hear I speak to them in Italian, they can hear my accent. And they'll, I'm finally to the point
You have a California accent? Is that what they say? Is it a California
initially,
accent?
They were like, lei Americano, or like, are you American? Are you English? I used to get that a lot. Now I'm finally to the point where they can't tell where I'm from, but they know I'm what they call straniero. I'm a foreigner. Okay. So they'll often say, where are you from? And I always say, I'm from California, because they're fascinated with California. And so that opens a door. And I'm from California. So I say, I'm from California. And then immediately it's, well, what are you doing here? Why would you ever leave California? Because they have, these ideas that like we're all just, surfing and we know movie stars, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so
maybe he's one.
Yeah, right. And so they think we're all George Clooney because George Clooney lives in Lake Como. But I'm from California, and that opens a door. Like, why are you here? And I say, well, I'm a minister. I'm a Protestant minister, protestante. And oftentimes they're curious. They'll ask, well, what is that, and what's the difference? And I'll just go straight to how are we right with God and also the authority. I'm real careful not to talk about certain things. Like you cannot talk bad about Mary. Mary is such a big deal, even for the nominal Catholic. There's so much superstition in Italy that Mary is more important than Christ. And so you just have to be really cautious not to say anything like that. Like get the gospel out there and let the gospel do the work, and the rest of those dominoes will begin to fall. That's what we've seen.
How does Roman Catholicism relate in Italy to being sort of state-sanctioned?
Oh man, this is where you see the persecution. Right. So it's the state church.
That's what I was just going to ask. Is it the state church?
Absolutely, 100%.
Forgive my ignorance, but I figured that.
Yeah. So put it this way:
it's amazing you're even there.
It's amazing we're even there. It really is. So, for example, there are no such things as like a 501c3.
Yeah.
We can't be like a nonprofit. So we bought a computer store, renovated it, and so now it looks like a church on the inside at least, but we still have to pay taxes like a store. Now we're registered with the local city as a humanitarian organization, and so and to do that, we get involved with the Red Cross, the Italian Red Cross. We do food distribution and things like that, and some Christian literature, so that we can have that door open. But the persecution comes that, they do not want, the Italian government does not want to see a proliferation of Protestant churches.
So they understand it.
They understand it. Well, certainly the Vatican does.
Yeah.
But then again, Chris, you have like two sides in Catholicism. So you've heard some of these comments that the Pope has made, about gay marriage, blessing gay marriage and things like that. The Pope is the current Pope, extremely liberal, extremely progressive. But not all cardinals and not all the people in Catholicism are progressive as he is. That said, so that being, they can be very hostile towards Protestantism. But you just don't get any of the tax breaks. We can't go out and get a loan for a building. So the only reason we have this building was there were 3 families that took out seconds on their homes and paid for it.
That is just remarkable.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good for us to hear that sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's not easy, but at the end of the day, the one thing that's the same, whether you're in Italy or America or wherever, the gospel does the work. At the end of the day, it's about the word.
How is the gospel? Can you tell us a little bit about your church? You said about 70 souls, I think. How is the gospel received on that soil?
Yeah. So it sounds strange to people, which it should. The gospel is strange. Right. Grace is counterintuitive. It's we get law naturally, but not grace. So that's always a bit strange to folks. But I think the hardest thing is getting people to come into the door. They're very superstitious about going to a Protestant church, and they think we're a cult.
Does the lack of glory, outward glory,
I think
they're used to, is that a big struggle for them?
Yeah, because look, Christianity to them is, and this is what one of the things that Catholicism does, they amass all of the great artists, and you walk into a cathedral, like you go into the Duomo in Milan, and it is breathtaking.
Well, most Protestants who go there want to go see all that.
Oh, it's incredible. Like you see it, you can't help but say, this is just really breathtaking. It's amazing. Yeah. And so, there is an aesthetic that in Italy is really important. So we would love, our dream is to buy what they call a deconsecrated Catholic church. So there's some of these Catholic churches, buildings, that have been officially deconsecrated by the church and the state, and now they're up for sale to be used as, a restaurant or a hotel or whatever. And our dream would be to buy one of those because it would look like a church. Obviously, remove, pictures of Mary and Jesus and that kind of thing. But that would be a big deal. When I got over there, for example, people thought I was a Jehovah's Witness because I had my tie. I look normal Reformed guy.
Are they present?
Oh, yeah. Jehovah's Witnesses are growing
so
fast.
So how in the world is that allowed in Italy?
Well, it's legal. It's completely legal in Italy to be whatever religion you want, but you don't get any kind of tax breaks or special treatment from the state like we do here in America. And so we have a lot of freedom.
The cults have invaded.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses are the fastest growing religion in Italy right now. Because I think what's happening is they're filling that void that Catholicism left. Catholicism has a lot of positive influence on the culture in terms of making it more conservative about sexual ethics and things like that. So abortion rates are lower than in most places in Europe. Transgenderism, those things exist, but they're not as progressive as in other places in Europe, and certainly not as progressive as they are here in America. That's the influence of the Catholic Church. But the thing they haven't done is teach the Bible. The Jehovah's Witnesses come in and say, oh, we'll teach you the Bible. And there's people who want to know the Bible. And so you see them everywhere. They thought I was a Jehovah's Witness when I came because I was a normal Reformed guy with my tie and my coat. And so I actually had to stop wearing that and wear the collar.
Because of the witnesses?
Because of the witnesses. And so that people would say, so our neighbors and people that we would invite to church say, oh, okay, that seems Christian. Because it's just like, you know what? Why make that a stumbling block?
So there's some kind of awareness that this is off. It's cultish.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
So we talked about this, I think. So how many Reformed bodies are in Italy?
Not many. No denominations. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to establish one right now, called in English we would call it the Presbyterian and Reformed Church of Italy. And so we have 4 small churches, Milan, Lecce, who's also another Westminster graduate, Vincenzo Coluccia. We have one in Perugia and Lago Trasimeno. They're very small. Ours is probably the biggest of those 4. It is. We've got about 70 souls. We have 2 elders and 3 deacons. So it's more established. It's more stable. The others do not yet have that kind of stability. And so they're still growing. And so there's those 4. And then you have some Brazilian Presbyterian missionaries. And there's another church on kind of there's another one in the province of Milan that we have a good relationship with. And he's got about maybe about 50, 60 souls. And then there's about 4 or 5 other churches in Italy. So all together, there are less than 10 Reformed or Presbyterian churches in the entire country, and over 60 million people in the country. And we're working with the Brazilians right now to try to create one denomination, because we don't want to have 2 or 3 Reformed or Presbyterian denominations when we're all teeny tiny and you have this big country. So
we've been glad to be your sending church, support you. But I'm guessing it's lonely.
Yeah, it can be lonely. I think it was more lonely, the first few years getting over there, during COVID and all that stuff.
Yeah.
The lockdowns and
and I hear the lockdowns were pretty fierce.
We were locked in our homes for 4 months.
Yeah.
It was like North Korea, and then you had the open and closing. But we got through all that, and it feels more like home now. Yeah. And the language is much more natural. And we have a great relationship with the leadership, great relationship with the congregation. Yeah. We really love them. Our elders, Vittorio and Mimo, they're arriving today for Synod. So this is their very first time ever seeing something like this. So I'll be translating the rest of the week. But happy about that. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, we're really excited about the work and thankful the Lord's opened a door there. You think of how much emphasis is given. Paul even said, pray for an open door.
Yeah.
The open door sort of theme throughout Scripture.
Right.
I think Philadelphia. I've opened a door for you.
Right. And our church is named Philadelphia.
There you go. Church of the Open. Well, I think it was Jay Vernon's name was the Church of the Open Door. But anyways, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
And we're really thrilled. We need to continue to make known what's happening there.
Yeah.
So that we in the States, we get, we kind of focus only.
Well, it's normal. It's normal. And I have only good things to say about Escondido URC. You guys have done a fantastic job.
I'm thankful. Our whole body has been very supportive of your work.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and we feel it. Janie and I feel it. I mean, feeling lonely is natural. And sometimes you feel like an astronaut or whatever, but out in outer space. But I'm grateful for, when you'll text me and say, "Hey, what's up?" Just it's good just to have that contact, and we really appreciate that. When people reach out to us, and we're really happy when people are able to come and see the work. And so we've had a few URC ministers come and preach. Brian Cochran, Dan Borvin, waiting for when you're coming over. You get over your fear of getting on a plane and just come over, or going over the Atlantic, or you're not going to be kidnapped or anything.
Maybe what was the movie where what's his name, Tom Hanks, ended up on an island? That may happen. But
we'll send Liam Neeson after to go find you if you're kidnapped. But we would love for you to come visit, Chris.
I'm gonna come. Okay. All right. So. After all that was great. What have we learned in the ministry after 20 years together doing this? I think that's a good subject. I think 20 years has gone by incredibly fast in the ministry. I mean, I've been in 2 charges. You've been in 2 charges. When we first went in, I think we were highly ambitious.
You think?
There's 2 kinds of ambition, right? There's godly ambition, and then there's the kind you have when you're a seminary student.
Sure. Perhaps.
So,
yeah. I think your motives are all kind of mixed up, and your ideas of what ministry are going to be are, not exactly clear. But how could they be? You don't have any experience. And I'm grateful for Westminster and the education I got.
Yeah.
And a lot of good equipping I think it gave us.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot of things you're just going to learn through the school of hard knocks.
Well, that's exactly right. I felt like I was equipped to know how to exegete the Scriptures. I had great tools given to me. Right. Great tools. But there were so many things, just like you said. I had to have my feet, what do they say, green? I had to get my feet wet. Yeah. And I learned as they were wet.
Right.
In other words, there were a lot of things. I went in first thinking I could solve a lot of problems and realize how much I need leadership.
Right.
Like how much we need good elders in the ministry.
That's huge. And a good relationship with them is really important to maintain. Yeah. And I think it's easy, especially coming out of a place like Westminster where you're trained so well, to think that whether you obviously don't want to have this idea, but it's just going to happen. You kind of think of yourself as a Jedi, in the Bible and theology. I guess the positive side of that is that you're there to teach doctrine, to teach covenant theology, the confessions, to help people understand the Bible, and you're equipped to do that. And that part, I think, I don't want to say it's the easy part, but looking back, it seems that way. Like that was the easy part, is the teaching. But it's the other side that you have to develop and learn is your love for the flock. I mean, a lot of that comes through the teaching. You want to feed them. You want your flock to be the best fed, most healthy, most nourished flock in the world. And but you've also got to walk with people through their difficulties, through, the valleys and the sadness, and not all the sheep are always, they don't always behave. And so there's a lot of, you have to learn to be a shepherd, and a gentle and a patient shepherd. Right. And I think a lot of that is going to come with time. And I know early on, I think I was just assumed, that, I just preach the gospel do the work. The gospel does do the work, but we also need to be very patient with people. Yeah,
and to be among our sheep, to get to know the sheep, to walk with them through those valleys. I mean, that's. I remember the first time up in Linden, there was a dear saint, family I loved. The saint died right in the room in front of me, and I remember thinking, seminary didn't tell me what to do.
Right.
I just remember a wise pastor saying, just be quiet. Be there for them. Read a scripture passage, pray, and just be there.
That's it. No, your words at that point aren't going to make things better.
Right.
And it's just better to be present. I know. I mean, look, we had, deaths. We had, 2 different suicides. Hard things.
Yeah, I've had that too.
Yeah, and they were difficult, and the ministry is full of that. And discipline cases. I think have your relationship with the elders, and that is huge. That's something that it took me a long time, I think, to learn. And my approach to leadership shifted quite a bit from my time in Santee in California to when I went to Italy. And being in Italy, I think and some of this it just comes from, I guess, age and experience. But Steve Donovan was also a big help, and helping me. Yeah, just you need someone there to tell you your blind spots, because we all have blind spots. We can't see everything. We don't, and we all lack some certain amount of self-awareness. So we need friends. We need people to, really love us enough to hold us accountable in a good way. And I think that shifted for me going over to Italy, and just feel more at ease of, the elders are there to lead the church. I'm there to assist them, like our church order says, with regard to church discipline and things like that. And I don't need to control everything,
that is so important.
Oh, huge.
I mean, because we start that way.
Right.
We start thinking we're the trained ones, and therefore, and there's a lot of expectation on pastors to take on things that elders sometimes are apprehensive because they may not feel as equipped to, even though they are, at least theologically. So,
but we assume we have all the answers.
We assume, yeah. And when you realize you don't, you're starting down the path of humility. Right. One of the things I've learned about is how you talked about the Lord's word does its work. That is absolutely true. But sometimes maybe it's just our day. I think it was Godfrey said years ago, we're so addicted to quick results. Part of the judgment is we don't get them today. So my experience has been through the consistent lectio continua preaching scripture, showing Christ. It takes time. It takes time for trust to be built in the ministry and for the sheep to hear it.
Yeah.
I think I was going through Genesis in year 5 up in Linden, and I always felt like that was the series where I felt like the church finally took off. It took 5 years. So I have this theory that if you're new in the pastorate, if you have great expectations for great change right away, and you think this is just going to be a rocking success, anything that's fast is probably bad.
Yeah.
It's trench work, isn't it?
I agree. I mean, certainly, there are exceptions to that. I think our church in Santee grew pretty fast at the beginning. And to be honest with you, it probably, went to my head a little bit, and feeling like, hey, I must be doing something right. It's all growing. But as we know, as you go further on in the ministry, you realize that, your job is to be faithful and to be steady. And one guy could be faithful, another guy could be faithful in the same way, and they may not have the same results. You cannot control the results.
Right.
The results are not up to you.
Yeah.
The only thing that we are responsible for is our faithfulness. Got to be faithful. And it is true that, as you said, it takes time to develop trust. I think, it takes time for the congregation to feel like, hey, I know that when I come to church on Sunday, my pastor, he's going to preach Christ. So I can bring my neighbor, I can bring my brother, I can bring whomever. They're going to hear a sermon that's going to bring me back and point me to Jesus Christ.
If they know that guy up there's for you.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Right.
They know what they're going to get. So, yeah, I mean, that's something I think, even here in Escondido, it's taken time.
Yeah.
And I guess we have to be realistic about, I always think of the parable of the kingdom, the growth of the seed in the kingdom, and how that's the mustard seed, slow growing. And then in the end, it's this big tree.
Right.
That's what we're going to see in the end, all the fruit of the work, but we don't always see that in the midst of it.
No, you don't. You don't. And now and then the Lord might give you little glimpses, and those are really encouraging. So yeah, yesterday being at Christ URC, I was able to preach there again, which is just wonderful. It was like a, family reunion, being at your church that, you served for a long time. Mm-hmm. And 3 pastors were there for synod, and all 3 were interns at Christ URC, once upon a time. And it just, you're so grateful to see things like that. And again, it's the gospel that does the work.
Right.
But sometimes the Lord will give you that encouragement. It's
a huge encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because discouragement is a problem, Chris.
Yeah. And how we handle that is a big
that's something
issue.
We should talk about.
Well, it is. Because we've all had it, and I always felt I was wired never to face sort of, I'm not a depressed person. I don't fall easily into depression. I can say in the course of ministry, there have been times like, I think I'm depressed. And that's not how I'm wired.
Right.
It affects the discouragement. There's spiritual warfare with this in all kinds of ways we don't realize, but the discouragements are real. Sheep are sheep. Sheep do what sheep do.
Sure.
And we're one too.
Right.
So
we're people, and people are sinners.
We're sinners. Right.
But there is discouragement. And that's something we could talk about, because I know friendship in the ministry is so important. It is so critical to have other pastor friends that you can call up. I'm so grateful for you and, all the years that we had, you'd be able to call me up and call you up. Just, I'm going through this right now. Because if you don't have that, if you only, obviously we need our wife to be our closest friend, but there's so many things that we really shouldn't be sharing with our wife in terms of the ministry.
Right. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, to protect her and protect the congregation. But we really do need other pastor friends for encouragement, because discouragement is normal. You said spiritual warfare. How many times, even now after, more than 20 years in the ministry, you still feel at times the devil saying, this is all for naught.
Yeah, and usually on Mondays.
Like, what are you doing? You preached a clunker, or whatever, or something went wrong in church, and we get discouraged. And that's also why I think, finding a hobby, some physical activity. You go to the gym. That's why you're so jacked.
Would you stop? Would you stop? That is not true.
You must be really under a lot of stress. You're pushing on. But I got into cycling, and it's just, you got to find something.
You've got
healthy.
to find something.
You got to find something that you enjoy, that really just.
It's a hobby.
Yeah, and releases just that that dopamine, those endorphins that just it's healthy for you. It's good.
Yeah. You've got to have that, and I didn't learn that until later on. I remember when I first started into my study till late on Saturday night, I wasn't taking care of myself. This was when I first started, and ministry. And then you'd carry these things to bed with you. I think it was Van Til said, you got to have skin of rhinoceros in the ministry.
Yeah.
I didn't at first. So, you'd carry these things to bed, you'd lose sleep. And obviously they're weighty things in people's lives that affect you. But
did you feel that way? Because did you feel like you had to just get all this work done and you never could get it where you wanted it? Or
yeah, it never felt. And well, I don't know if I ever feel like the work's done, but you do feel. I mean, there's certain personalities that are kind of workaholics, right? Certain pastors that are like
one.
That. Yeah, I'm kind of like that too. Constantly driving and driving and driving. But I have learned, and I think it has helped me to put things in perspective and to block my time and to make sure that I'm doing what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't emphasize how important that's been. That has kept my mind kind of refreshed,
right.
But you're absolutely right about the sort of company of pastors,
Oh yeah.
Like that has been a surprising blessing in ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Is my fellow pastor friends.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have them.
Right.
And there's just certain personalities, you connect with better.
Right.
And you build those friendships. That has been incredible for me.
Oh, so important. Yeah. Trust. And you feel like you're able to just, open up and talk about whatever. I'm really grateful in Milan that the two elders I serve with, they've become two of my best friends. And then also their wives and my wife and the deacons, their wives, we spend a lot of time together, and it's just such a beautiful blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's birthday, we all get together all the time. And, Mimo and Vittorio, they call me almost every day,
Mm-hmm.
when they're coming home from work. How's it going? What'd you do today? What are you having for dinner tonight? Whatever. Yeah. Just because it's something mutual encouragement. Encouragement is such a big thing. When you read Paul's letter to Timothy, how much is encouragement the theme?
By the way, you wrote a little commentary on it.
That was a little segue into.
That's what I was trying to.
It was.
I was taking the bait.
It was
I was
not.
taking the
No,
bait.
it wasn't. Yeah, honestly,
Mike wrote a great commentary on this.
It wasn't that. It wasn't.
But I want to say that it's a really good commentary.
Thanks, appreciate that.
If you want to study 1 Timothy,
Timothy, you didn't even read it.
I did. I endorsed it.
You did. I know you did.
I did read it. 2 Timothy. Sorry. Yeah. If you want a good commentary in 2 Timothy, grab it. Well, who published that?
RHB.
Yeah, RHB.
Reformed-theology.
It's that series.
Lectio Continua.
Yeah.
No, I enjoy doing it. No, the point is that like if you read that letter of, or if you read my book, which you can buy on Amazon, but if you read the letter, it's so full of encouragement to Timothy, because Paul knows, Timothy, you're going to be, you're the pastor of Ephesus. You're going to go through all this hard stuff. Yeah. Like you can tell as you're reading that letter that Paul knows way better than Timothy.
Yeah.
The kind of discouragement and difficulty, suffering. How many times do you talk about suffering for the gospel, right? And so I think that's the part of the ministry that maybe we were just naive to coming out of seminary. I don't know how any seminarian could know, because you just have to learn that. It's like being trained in the military for combat, but you haven't been in combat yet. Right. You got to go to combat to really have that experience, right?
Right.
So I don't know if that analogy is
well, and I think I just preached on Paul's thorn in the flesh yesterday. That's such a great passage, because he's being assaulted by super pastors for his weakness, his ineffectiveness, whatever the thorn was. And Paul sort of bears his heart there. He says, look, I went to the Lord and pleaded 3 times for him to take it away. And he said, my grace is sufficient. So he learned to boast in the infirmity. But I also said in the middle of the sermon, I said, I think what happens is that we tend to focus only on the thorn and think the world's coming down. But I can testify, I know you can testify, that the whole course of our lives in this, the lines have fallen to us in pleasant places.
Yeah.
It's like,
Amen.
He has been so good to us. Like, I think, I'm with you on the sufferings. I wasn't prepared for any of that. It's been hard, but I also stand back and say, wow, what a blessed life.
The Lord has treated me far better than I ever deserved.
Yeah. And it's been, what a thrilling call.
Yeah.
Calling in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, look what we get to do.
I know. That's
what we get to do.
There's probably not a week that goes by that I don't think I get to do this.
I know.
This is a blessing.
Reverend Campbell, you say, and we get paid for it.
I know. You say, you might not get paid very much, but at least you'll get paid.
Depends on which reformed body you're in.
Maybe. But that's very true. I think, would be one of the things. Relationship with your wife.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. And that takes time too, to grow. I always felt like, even it's just like anything. Look at how patient the Lord is with us. If you look at our marriages, I look at where I am with my wife now. It took a lot of time to grow in learning how to be a dad, how to be a husband, just as learning how to be a pastor.
Right.
It's the same trajectory.
Very similar.
It's very similar. And it's not, you don't have it all together when you begin.
No.
And there's a lot of conflict that builds that character.
Well, right. I mean, think about it. After 15 years of marriage, 20 years of marriage, 30 years of marriage, next year I'll be married 35 years. I look back to when I was first married, in those first 5 years, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I thought I knew.
I was like a chief narcissist.
But I didn't know anything. Yeah. And so I think in many ways, the pastorate is very similar.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know at the beginning. You're trained well if you went to a good seminary. We went to Westminster, California. We had an awesome team of instructors and professors. We knew how to exegete the scriptures. We knew what we needed to do. We had good priorities.
Right.
But all that other stuff, like being a husband, for example, you just don't know. But how important is it to maintain a good relationship with your wife? Because she's more important than the ministry.
And as you grow in that, it's going to only make your ministry stronger.
Yeah, I agree.
All those things in your relationship with your children, those are all things that have helped me to know how to help others.
Yes,
I've grown in those things.
Yeah.
But still lots to learn. I find that great statement, God uses a crooked stick to strike a straight blow.
Right.
That's amazing.
It's true. Very true.
Yeah.
Another thing I would say is this has, I think, become more important to me recently, and in the last, it's probably since I've been to Italy, but is cultivating your personal communion with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I think I was more of the mindset early on that, well, if I'm preparing sermons, that's it. And I remember Hal Jones telling us, no, you need to go find food for your soul, on a regular basis, like sit before the Lord.
Have you ever just sat down, you've been spiritually just out of whack or whatever, and you read and you're amazed at how the reading has really helped you to reframe?
Oh yeah.
Picking a book like John Owen on communion with God, something like that.
Right.
What it does, the benefits of that are incredible.
Totally agree. For me,
you got to read.
Yeah, got to read. For me, last year, I got on this Augustine kick and went back and read Augustine's Confessions, after 20 years or something. And it just, came to life. Mm-hmm. And, the way he talks about his thirst for God, kind of that Psalm 63, sense of just a hunger for God. That is so important. If I don't have time sitting before the Lord, and I know even in our circles, there'll be some who would mock this and say that's pietism.
I react now against that.
Yeah, and I got to say,
I
what?
push back on that all the time.
If you're listening to this and you say, Mike Brown sounded like a pietist, well, God bless you. But I disagree with you.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Because encouraging, we need to be in the scriptures and we need to be calling to the Lord in prayer. If we ever get to the point where that's some sort of legal burden to us, something's wrong.
Right.
It's not supposed to be like that.
That's right.
It's supposed to be something that's sweet delight.
Absolutely.
And something that's, and I'm not saying it's easy. I always felt like I did better before I went to seminary, and then I went to seminary. And I don't know how much I prayed in seminary, but it couldn't have been much.
Yeah.
And we're being immersed in all this truth. Yeah. All these things are being put in your head and you're overwhelmed and you're running everywhere. Well, that's ministry.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good point, because I remember seminary being the most spiritually enriching time and the most spiritually dry time. Mm-hmm. Most spiritually enriching because I'm learning all this stuff, going to hear, Meredith Klein lecture. And what do you do? Had Steve Baugh, New Testament. He's opening up the word.
Yeah.
But then, as you said, I don't feel like I prayed much. You're just so busy. And then, like you say, ministry is, in so many ways, seminary prepared us for the average week in ministry.
Right.
You're on a schedule, on a hamster wheel. And it took me a lot of years to realize I can't afford not to cultivate my personal communion with my Father in heaven. because that, and I will say, to any pastors listening to this or seminary students, that is indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
It's just indispensable. You want to get yourself into a self-discipline. It's about self-discipline is what it is. This isn't pietism.
It is self-discipline.
You need to be this. It's like anything else that you're going to do about eating right or going to the gym or whatever.
Yep.
You also need to take care of your soul. And if all it is your work, your ministry, you think that that's caring for your soul. I mean, maybe there's some guy out there that, that's working for him. But I think in most cases, it doesn't work. It doesn't function.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's discipline. I mean, what do they say? It takes 30 to 40 times to make a habit.
Yeah.
And it does happen.
Right.
It does happen. You can build a habit.
You can.
It can be done,
right.
Well, anything else? Anything else that's on? I mean, there's so much to this.
Yeah.
When Mike came on, he says, well, you're so different than every other podcast because basically the rule is just let it fly. There's no real outline here. But I think that's the best anyway.
It's always fun. It's always fun with you. So
something's going to happen.
Something's going to happen. We'll score some points. I don't know what the game plan is, but we'll score some points.
We had Scott. You'll meet Chad Vegas here this week, but Chad was on and Scott was sitting here and Chad looked at Scott and he looked at me and he says, something's going to happen to Scott. Somebody's going to get mad. The word jerk's going to be thrown
Well, with
around.
Scott, something's going to happen. That's just a given. You don't even have to say it. And so I'm looking forward to seeing so many people this week.
He's great.
So.
Well, there's all kinds of wonderful friends we're going to see in the next this coming week. So
I look forward to hanging out with you, man.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks for coming all the way from Italy to be on the AGR podcast.
Just for you, Chris. Yeah. just for you. So earning all those sky miles just to be here. Anyway,
we pay well.
No, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, Mike. And blessings on your ministry.
Thank you.
And
blessings on yours as well. And you're doing a good work and keep it up. Press on.
Thanks, brother. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.